Kia ora, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today. So my name is Andrew. I'm a Community Services Manager at Whānau, and I'm joined today by one of our friends from Haven to talk about some of the ways you can feel more secure in your family finances. And I will hand over to Sky to introduce herself.
Kia ora, everyone. It's really lovely to be here. Thank you for kicking us off this morning, Andrew. So I'm from a company called Haven Financial Advisors, or Haven for short, and we are committed, and so we specialise in talking to people about insurances. So that's things like life insurance, trauma insurance, medical insurance, income protection insurance, as well as Kiwisaver. And we also have teams that are dedicated to talking to people about mortgages, so you can buy your first home or buy a second home or whatever it is that you're up to, and also things like house, car and contents insurance. Haven's been around since 2008, and we have 60 advisors around the country. And it's our role to help educate and empower everyday New Zealanders to understand where they're at financially, what they're trying to achieve financially, and help you put some kind of strategies and plans in place to help you along the way. I've personally been an advisor with Haven for 13 years. I joined 13 years ago for a variety of reasons, and I've really loved this role the whole time, and so I'm still here giving advice to clients and helping out advisors to give advice to clients. I have 3 adult children, so I had children young, but my children are now in their early to mid 20s. And I get to be based in Whangarei. So I grew up just north of Whangarei, left Whangarei for a long time, but I've come back in the last 3 or 4 years. Super pleased and super proud to be partnered with Plunket, and really lovely to be here again with you today, Andrew, to talk to you and the Whānau, the Plunket Whānau, about what it is that we can do to help you, and maybe you guys can pick up some tips along the way today as well, to be able to put some strategies in place for yourself and for your family and your children.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sky. Very, very privileged to be able to have you as a guest for this chat, and obviously a whole wealth of experience there that you bring today. So there's going to be a couple of things that we want to cover. So it's just starting with getting the most out of your Kiwisaver, some general advice for making your money go a bit further, as well as the value of insurance, especially for young whānau. And how someone like Sky at Haven can help whānau with more sort of personalized financial support. So really, really hopefully useful and practical discussions that we're going to be having here today. But before we sort of get into the meaty discussions, we do have a giveaway, obviously thanks to Haven, which is going to be a baby bath bundle that we're going to give away to one lucky question asker. So there's going to be a link to the bundle in the comments, and to be able to be in the draw to win, all you need to do is ask a question for Sky to answer towards the end of this chat. So let's talk about family finances. So Sky, Kiwisaver is one of those things that operate in the background for most of us. It just sort of comes straight out of your pay packet. Especially when you first sign up, you fill in a form, you pick a percentage, and to be honest, you sort of forget about it, and then only until you sort of need it or realize that you've still got quite a bit of money sitting there in the background. So are you able to sort of explain to us how to make it work best for us?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I really love talking about Kiwisaver. In the 12 or 13 years that I've been talking to people about Kiwisaver, I've really seen the difference that getting a little bit of advice, a little bit of knowledge behind you can make to your how much money you've got in your Kiwisaver and now and into the future. So what I can do today is just talk about general information around Kiwisaver and insurances and budgeting. But really, it's really important to start thinking about having a chat to an advisor. So when you have a chat to one of our advisors, it's free. It's no obligation. I'm pretty bossy with the team of 60 advisors that I support. So if anyone is strong arms a client or makes them feel uncomfortable, they don't last in this industry or in this business. So can guarantee you that's never going to happen. So it is really good, and there'll be a couple of opportunities towards the end of the session to ask some questions, absolutely, but also make a plan to connect in with one of our advisors, because connecting with an advisor gives you some free, impartial, no obligation advice and support, and it's talking about you and your personal situation, because Kiwisaver, insurances, budgets, none of that is one size fits all. It's all very personalized. One of the things that we see when we look at Kiwisaver with our clients is, are they in the right fund? A lot of people, like you just said, Andrew, sign up through work or sign up through the bank or sign up through some kind of online kind of click here and have your Kiwisaver sorted type channel. If you haven't had advice on your Kiwisaver, or you haven't had really good advice on your Kiwisaver, there's a really good possibility that you're in the wrong fund. So an example of that is, by nature, most people are wired to be conservative. So if someone says to me, do you want low risk or high risk, Sky? I understand money, but my instinct is low risk. I've worked hard for that income. I don't want to see it disappear into the night. I'm not comfortable with risk. I'll have low risk, which essentially means I'm going to be in a conservative fund. However, if you get to understand that it's less to do with risk and more to do with volatility, and markets will go up and down over time, then you start to understand whether you'd be better off to be in an aggressive or a growth fund, or better off to be in a conservative fund. So an example of that is if you're close to buying a house. Now, when I say close, I mean the next 18 months, 3 years. If you're close to buying a house or you're close to retirement, you probably do want to be in a conservative fund. But if you're 5, 6, 7, 8 years away from buying a house, or more than 10 years or 15 years away from retirement, which I'm going to assume that most of our families dialing in today would be in one of those categories, you probably want to think about being in a growth or aggressive fund. But you want to do that when you understand the difference in terms of what happens in the markets, what happens in a growth fund or a conservative fund when something happens overseas, like as an example, when something happens in America or when there's an oil crisis going on, what does happen to our investments? So when you understand how those investments work, you can make a really good decision. It's really important that we also think about the right contribution rate. So we can now put 3.5, we now, by default, put 3.5% of our income into Kiwisaver, and our employer matches that with 3.5. That will rise to 4%. You can also choose to put in 4, 6, 8 or 10% of your income into your Kiwisaver fund. And it's really important that you think about when is the right time to increase your contribution rate, but also when is the right time to reduce that down. So what I often see is we have 2 people in a family. One of them takes some time off work to be a stay-at-home parent, and the other one continues to work. And often I see the person who's still working, they'll increase their contribution rate. They'll go to 4 or 6 or 8 or 10%. And I'm like, that is amazing. That's great. But the person who's not working is currently not putting any money into their Kiwisaver account. So what I encourage families and couples to think about is, should the person who's working put in 3.5, and should they do $5, $10, $15 or $20 a week into the person who's not working's Kiwisaver? So that person, while they're out of the workforce, can still have their Kiwisaver gaining momentum and gaining and building over time, so that over time both of those families, both of those parents' Kiwisavers are healthy for buying their first home or for retirement. One of the things that I'm passionate about is making, like women in New Zealand and women in the world really, but women in New Zealand, we are still about 25% behind in our Kiwisaver balances. Now, one of the reasons for that is that most of the time, the woman is the person in the family that takes the time out to look after the children and all the elderly parents. So when we do that because it's important to us, and it's a privilege to be able to do that, but we need to make sure that we're still putting money into those Kiwisaver accounts, whether it's the male or the female that's become the stay-at-home parent, to make sure that we're keeping both those people in that family, both of those Kiwisaver accounts continuing to tick up and continuing to grow, so that when we get to first home or retirement, we've both got really good funds available to be able to contribute to that experience. Any questions on that, Andrew?
Yeah, no, so there, we do actually have a question from one of our listeners. So Taylor, is it worth considering Kiwisaver for our kids now?
Absolutely. I absolutely think the earlier we put children into Kiwisaver, the better. I will absolutely temper that with, if we've got single income household, you want to put your own oxygen mask on first. You want to make sure that the family household and the parents' Kiwisaver is ticking up. But if you've got a little bit of extra money, it might be $5 a week. It might be that you set up a kids Kiwisaver and you say to grandparents and aunts and uncles and all of those types of people who want to do birthday and Christmas gifts, hey, rather than spending $50 on a toy or a something, why don't you spend $25 and pop $25 into that child's Kiwisaver? And we do see lots of families do that. It's such a great strategy. And it really helps when children start to kind of get to that 8, 9, 10-year-old stage and they start to understand money. You can start to share with them their Kiwisaver app. You can start to show it to them, talk to them about it, help them become educated and empowered around Kiwisaver and around money and around growth. And if you're a family that can do pocket money or whatever it is that we currently call it, then you can get your kids to pop some money in there. $1 a week over a long period of time makes a really big difference to those children when they do get to adult life, and can purchase their first home.
Yeah, definitely. It's that sort of compounding effect, isn't it? The sort of earlier, more time you have in it, the greater the effect.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I guess this sort of brings us to the funds, right? So currently in the New Zealand sort of financial sector, there's so many different funds. Banks are running them, private investment companies are running them. You see them on TV, the radio. It's sort of everywhere. What's the right provider? What's the right fund? And especially
well, this is right. What is the right provider and how do we choose that? That's one of the, fortunately, that is one of the roles of us as advisors, is to really help you understand the difference between different providers, the difference between the provider A and provider B, the difference between bank providers and non-bank providers, and help you make a really good decision. We've got a couple of providers that we work with at the moment who have this really cool app that they use, and it's got shared goals on it. So it's essentially a linked goal. So you can have, I'm going to genderize this, and I'm really sorry if you're not in a male-female relationship, but if you have a husband and a wife or two partners living in a house and they've got a couple of children, you can have what we call linked goals. So his Kiwisaver and her Kiwisaver are still separate, but they're linked. So you can see together we've got $85,000 towards our first home, and then you can also link your children's goals in there as well. So you can go, as a family, we've got $90,000 in our Kiwisaver balances, and let's celebrate that, and let's really have that conversation around that. So different providers will give you different outcomes for children, and it's all about picking the right provider, and that is an individualized conversation that I highly recommend you have with an advisor, because it's not one size fits all. Otherwise, we'd only have one Kiwisaver provider. That's right. If everyone wanted one provider, we'd just have one in New Zealand, and we don't. We have something like 35 providers in New Zealand now. So lots of complexity, and we can help kind of nail down that, reduce down that complexity and help people make good decisions about what they're comfortable investing in and how they want to look for themselves and for their children.
Yeah, and there's just a question around sort of Cora asks sort of what growth fund is best for children's funds. Is there, do you guys have different outlooks between someone in their 30, 40 compared to what you'd recommend for a child starting their Kiwisaver?
Yeah, absolutely. There are definitely different funds that you would use for children versus adults. But again, that's going to come down to the tolerance, the attitude and the tolerance of what the parents are comfortable with. So parents will generally choose, once they understand, they'll make different decisions for themselves and different decisions for their children. So no, there isn't a one size fits all. So I can't make an absolute recommendation on the best growth fund for children for you, Cora, but I do encourage you to really reach out to one of our advisors and have that conversation and work it out with them, because their job is to help you understand those things.
Awesome. So let's move on to budgeting. So you mentioned that you don't like the word budgeting because of all the connotations that come with it. But are you able to talk about making our dollars go a bit further, especially in this sort of
Yeah.
day and age?
Absolutely. I think budgeting is a bit like goals. I don't like the word goals either, but I think it's all because of, it's kind of the connotations that we have around it. So I prefer the word intention or money plan. So what am I going to do with my money? What's my intention? What am I trying to achieve? Because if you say, Sky, if you've got a budget, I think, oh, that means I can't spend any money on anything that's important or interesting to me. So I encourage people to use a different word around that. So for me, it's about having a financial plan or a financial intention. And it's about making every dollar count. So it's about being really intentional in where I'm spending money, particularly when we start to have a single income household, right? You've got one parent who's taken some time off work to look after a baby or babies. And so you want to, times are tough and we can only make our money stretch so far, but it's about making sure that every dollar we have counts. So don't supersize your mortgage if it means that you're going to have to go back to work, unless that's important to you. Don't put 10% into your Kiwisaver unless you can, and unless you both want to go back to work. Make some different decisions, just short-term decisions. Like it might be that actually it's really important for one of us to be home for 12 months with our first child, and so let's cut down our Kiwisaver contributions to 3.5 or 4%. Let's look at things like our subscriptions and our streaming services and our gym memberships. Let's look for things that we don't need to be spending money on right now, so that we can take some time off to be a stay-at-home parent. And if that's not where you're at, if 2 incomes is where you're at, then celebrate that and enjoy that and make those good decisions. But it is about being really honest with yourselves about where are we spending our money and where can we reduce that spend. And times are tough and we don't have a magic wand, but it's about making peace with that. And it's about just really being really clever on what you are spending money on, and thinking about things like, when my children were young, I was a single parent for a period of time, a number of years. We didn't do big expensive birthday or Christmas presents. I decided that experiences and making memories was more important. So one summer I went off and brought a summer pass to an outdoor pools in my local community. I think it cost me like $100 or $80. I can't remember. It was a number of years ago now. And, 3 or 4 times a week, all through summer, popped down to the pools, kids swam, I read my book, they hung out with their friends, and they still in their 20s are like, that was one of the best summers we ever had, Mum. So, it's about going, let's have a picnic in the park rather than let's go into Rainbow's End and having really expensive toys. It's like, think about what's important to you and your values and your family, and how can you make that happen without spending lots and lots of money.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, here at Plunkett, we all 100% recognize that. And for us, especially at Community Services, we want to ensure that we are able to provide services that are free, or at least just a gold coin. Not just that, but I think all across the country, there's a lot of councils and other organizations that run a lot of free activities for parents, especially in school holidays. So it's really just about sort of keeping an eye out and finding some of those things that are really gonna be able to, like you said, save some of that money, but at the same time deliver something that the kids are really going to love and enjoy. And really
Totally.
remember.
Yeah, no, it's it's so great that Plunkett and the wider community do run those kind of community local events that are free or gold coins. It's just it's an awesome thing that Plunkett does.
But definitely did want to just highlight the fact that it's always a tough choice, isn't it? What you give up, what you don't give up, what matters to you, what doesn't, and it's never easy. It's always a discussion between like people like yourselves as financial advisors, as well as with like you said, your partners or your family, isn't it?
Yeah, totally, absolutely.
Great. So another thing that we sort of talked about earlier is the importance of insurance, especially for young whānau. So are you able to sort of give your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I think when we have our first child or children, and we start to build our lives together as a family, or as a whānau, people start to think about, oh, what actually happens if one of us passes away, or if one of us gets really unwell or sick? And it's not something that we like talking about. Like, we're not good at talking about it. And advisors have become really comfortable talking about it because it is our role all day, every day, to help people make really good decisions around insurance. But we have this misconception that insurance is expensive. And insurance can be expensive. Absolutely. You can spend moonbeams on insurance, but you can also spend $10 a week and just have a little bit of life insurance or a little bit of trauma insurance. And you can also spend $100 a month if you've got $100 a month. And it's just about figuring out, what your budget is and what's really important right now. The biggest thing that we find when we talk to people about insurance, when they put something in place, or if they don't put something in place right now because they can't and they come back to us later, is people just feel like they've got a safety net, because that's all insurance does. If someone gets really unwell, if someone gets something like cancer, or can't work for a period of time, or passes away, insurance just eases the financial stress of that. It's not a silver bullet. It doesn't fix the problem. It just takes away some of that stress. And I know we've got things like Give a Little Page and all of those types of things, but it's really difficult for families when they're struggling with some kind of major health event to then find the energy to go and put themselves out on social media and say, I need money for this. And for the sake of having a conversation with an advisor and figuring out whether we can have a little bit of insurance that is going to work for us when we need it, that might, $10 a week or whatever it is that you've got available, it might just mean that you can actually deal with that health event in a really sensitive and quiet way for yourselves and survive that financially. So we spend our time thinking about that and helping clients thinking about that all the time. And not everyone who talks to us takes our advice, and that's okay. It's better. My perspective is I would far rather that we talk to 100 clients or 100 people, and some of them take our advice and some of them don't, because if they don't, it's because been able to make an educated and empowered and informed decision. And it's really, really important. It's same as Kiwisaver, it is not one size fits all. So, what's the type of insurance that's right for you, Andrew, is not going to be what's right for me. And the type of money that you spend on insurance is not going to be the same as what I spend. So it's definitely, talking to an advisor around insurance and getting it set up correctly and getting support at claim time is really, really important. So that's kind of that's our view on insurance, and that's why we think that insurance and Kiwisaver conversations need to be kind of held hand in hand, and that's why we do both of those with our clients.
Awesome. So a couple of questions from the chat. So Betsy, sort of just keeping on the theme of insurance for now. What would you see as sort of a must-have, or some of the more popular, more uptake in terms of types of insurance that people are? Yeah.
So the two most cost-effective policies in New Zealand are generally trauma or critical condition or critical illness cover. So that is something that pays out a lump sum if someone gets something like cancer, has a heart attack or a stroke. And the providers that we use, we never want to think about our children getting unwell and getting something like cancer or ending up in intensive care or a coma. But the providers that we use, if we have one of the parents insured, the children, whether it's 1, 2, 5 or 10, also have free trauma or critical illness cover. So trauma is something that I'm hugely passionate about putting in place for families. Life insurance is also very useful and can be really cost effective as well. So those life and trauma are the two things that we see most families put in place. And then, if budget allows and if there's a need for it, then we talk about things like income protection and medical insurance. But trauma and life for young whānau is probably the two things that I would think is the most important.
Yeah, especially kids. It's always something going on, and when you're out and about, things can happen, right?
Absolutely.
And absolutely. Especially some of personally, I've had family members with young children that have had some sort of quite rare cancer and other diseases, and unfortunately, a lot of the time it's not covered, or you're on a waiting list, right, for months and months and months. So, having the option or that cover definitely opens up a lot more options for treatment and different levels of care, which
absolutely,
right. Cool.
Yeah,
So,
yep. Sorry, Andrew, you go.
oh, sorry. I was just actually going to bring it back a little bit because we had a question earlier about mortgages. Because you mentioned, we're talking about budgeting. You mentioned not sort of maxing out your mortgage borrowing. So Marie just asked a question around, how do you sort of decide on what's a sort of genuinely comfortable mortgage amount instead of just going with, the most amount that you can borrow?
Yeah, I think it does require a budget. I hate that word as we've just talked about, but it does require being really honest with yourselves about, like where can we, what kind of mortgage payments can we sustain and still have a life that is meaningful for us. And I've met clients that that pay the maximum they can on their mortgage and they pay it off in 12 years and they're prepared to eat noodles for those 12 years, and I'm like, that's cool, but that's not me. So when my children were young, I took a mortgage holiday for 6 months because we were able to do that back in those days. I think you can do it for more like 3 months now. But then when we paid the mortgage, we paid the minimum that we needed to maintain the mortgage, and just knew that when I went back to work, that things would change, and I could increase those payments and start to pay that mortgage off in a more meaningful way. So if you want to work out the calculations, probably best thing to do is again talk to an advisor, and we have mortgage advisors as well who can kind of help you understand the pros and cons of increasing or decreasing those payments or increasing or decreasing that lending. So those types of things shouldn't be done in isolation. They should be done with support, just as much as the Kiwisaver and insurance advice. It's all about support. It's all about free, no obligation support so that you guys can make a decision about what you're most comfortable with. Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask because I mean, traditionally speaking, when you're talking about mortgages, you go straight to a bank, right? You go to the NZ and the SB, and they have their own in-house advisors. I mean, what's the sort of difference or the benefit compared to from Haven compared to?
Yeah, so if you rock off to a bank, so you go off to ANZ and you put your Kiwisaver and your insurance and your mortgage with ANZ staff can talk about ANZ. Come and talk to an advisor. We can talk about ANZ. We can talk about ASB. We can talk about all sorts of providers. So we can go out to market with your Kiwisaver, with your insurance and your mortgages. We can go to market and we can find the best option that best suits you. And we're not siloed into I work for ANZ or I work for whoever. I can only talk about this particular product or these particular options that are available. So independence is what an advisor gives you.
Right, it's amazing. I mean, a lot of the time it's quite a personal decision, right? When you come to talk about finances, and a lot of the time you sort of go with what you're comfortable with. You've had your ANZ bank account or ASB bank account since you were 12 or whatever, and that's sort of you just stick with, right? So it's always a bit scary when you need to go pick up the phone and call someone you never met and give them your life story about how you spend your money and what you sort of want to prioritize, right? So it sort of moves us on to the last sort of thing we'll get into, which is how can Whānau get more support?
Yeah, cool. So I think there's going to be a little slide popped up on the screen for us. There we go. There's a QR code, and I think there's going to be a link popped into the chat as well. So click on that link or scan on that QR code. First of all, we'll put you in the draw to win $5,000 holiday, which is we draw that 4 times a year, and that's because we're pretty proud to be partnered with Plunket. So it's for Plunket families. So have a chat with us. We'll pop you in the draw for $5,000 travel voucher. Like I said, it's free, it's no obligation, and we will just basically go through and have a conversation with you, and we'll help you do things like make sure you've got a will. So get your will. We can give you some free will kits. We can go through and chat with you about your Kiwisaver and your insurances. If mortgages are appropriate or house, car and contents insurance is appropriate, then we'll make sure that we connect you in with one of our advisors in those spaces as well. And it's really interesting that there's this whole perception around financial advisors being kind of like people who are really good with money and come from money and have all of this privileged life. Just not true. Like I've talked about, being a single parent, three children when I was in my 20s, and it's the same for all our advisors. None of us come from money. None of us have little trust fund babies. We've all worked really hard. We've all had our own life experiences. Most of our advisors are ex-tradies or ex-hospo or ex-something, and then they've had some life and they've come into this industry because they really want to help people make really good decisions around where they are financially and what they're trying to achieve. So hopefully that kind of answers that question. So reach out to an advisor is basically the best answer.
Awesome. So we're sort of nearing the end of our discussion today. So I just wanted to firstly announce our winner of the prize, which is Cora. So thank you so much for coming today, and congratulations. Nice. One of our lovely staff, Mackenzie, will message you to organise the details.
Well done, Cora. Thank you for asking your question too. That was amazing.
Yeah, just wanted to note that there's quite a few questions. Definitely apologies if we didn't get to it. And like Sky said, please feel free to reach out. The amazing team there, that I'm sure they'd be more than happy to have a chat and see how they can help. But otherwise, yeah, Sky, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, thank you so much for inviting me along today. It's been great to be here. Great to be here last year as well, and great again to connect with you, Andrew, and be able to give some hopefully some really good useful information to the Plunkett families.
Yeah, awesome. So my final comment is, I think there was just a question around what does Plunkett offer. So look, for us, feel free to go onto our website as well. We've got a phone number as well as emails that you can reach us on. We operate throughout the whole country, so we're more than happy to have a chat about how we can support you, and our numbers there on the screen. So yeah, thank you so much again for everyone coming here today, and I'm sure we'll see you all around in the community.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Sky.